The views and opinions expressed on the cap are those of the hosts. They do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of OldMilk Media. Any opinions stated aren't intended to offend anyone. On this episode of the Cap Podcast, we talk about Blue Lips by Schoolboy Q. Welcome back. This is episode 501 of your critical but accurate tour through hip hop, the Cat Podcast. We are your tour guides. I am Nate Sperlin. That is Taylor McLeod. Thank you for tuning in on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever else you might be tuning in on. Feel free to go ahead and join the conversation by leaving a comment and liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Taylor, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. The clouds are out, so this the normal sun that shines through this light at the time that we record isn't out right now, so I can't complain. How are you?
I'm good, except there is no sun at all. It's just all rain. And tomorrow it's gonna be sunny, but I'm busy all day, which sucks. All I wanted to do was play some fucking basketball. That's really all I want to do. And I can't do it tomorrow, unfortunately, because I'm enriching the young minds of tomorrow, which
Yeah. It's been raining out here for like 3 months. Like it just pours every day. So I'm thankful for just a cloudy day at this point.
yeah, a cloudy day without rain. And maybe a sneak appearance by the sun too.
Maybe.
We'll see. But
maybe, possibly.
Yeah. All right. On this episode of the Cat Podcast, we are talking about Blue Notes by Schoolboy Q. The album is 18
Blue
tracks
Lips
and 56 minutes long, featuring Rico Nasty, Devin Malik, Lance Skywalker, as Chike, Freddie Gibbs, Ab Soul, Jazzy, and Childish Major. Once again, feel free to join the conversation by leaving a comment in the comment section below. That being said, Taylor, what is your first initial reaction to Blue Lips by Schoolboy Q?
Well, you called it Blue Notes to start.
Oh,
so
did I?
Yeah, it's Blue Lips. I know you know it. It's just, I love it, honestly. I've listened to it like 4 or 5 times since it's been out. I've taken notes sometimes. I've played it in the car. I've played it in headphones. I've played it over the speakers in my place, and I love it. I mean, I'm a Schoolboy Q fan to begin with. I know that towards the end of last season, some old Q was sneaking into my like weekly power rankings. So I think it's good. I mean, there's some songs similar to a lot of other Schoolboy Q albums that aren't for me, like something like Pop with Rico Nasty. That's not necessarily for me, and I think that Schoolboy Q's always had that mix on his albums. And I think my first impression really is that there's so much like not even nostalgia based on Schoolboy Q being big from a time that, we were early teenagers into teenagers, like through high school, that he was really, really blowing up with TDE. But I think that like with the rollout of this, with a couple singles, music videos, Q promoting it on Twitter the way he has been, which we don't really see from artists as much anymore, like from big artists, like constant promotion and interaction with fans and interaction with, other musicians who are reposting the stuff. That's not something we see so much. So I feel very nostalgic about this album, but more in the way that it was rolled out. Like there's some sounds on here, especially the song with Ab Soul, that is like a time machine back to like, 10 years ago, 11 years ago. But this album, to me, the phrase that I've almost had in my head for the last, 48 hours or so about this album is like, we have an adult in the room again. Right.
Yeah.
And when you and I were young, it felt like every artist, right, was like that. But as time has gone on and streaming has dominated, the conversation in the mental space around not just hip hop and rap, but all music, I feel like there's less and less of a feeling like there's an adult in the room, and it's more like, all right, we're just gonna cross our fingers and hope this goes big on TikTok. This album to me feels like we have like an adult back in the room with a bunch of thought put into this. And yeah, so I really love it.
Yeah. I think that this album is perfect for Schoolboy Q fans like yourself. Like I think that this is something that is made mostly for you guys. But as someone who I'm not gonna say I'm like a diehard fan of Schoolboy Q, but I'm also not like his core fan base. I'm kind of unmoved by this album. Like it's the typical Schoolboy Q album where there's things that I like and there's things that I don't like. Overall, like going into it, I was excited because we hadn't heard from Schoolboy Q in a while. It's been like 5 years. I think Crash Talk was the last one, maybe 4 years. No, that's 5 years because that was 2019. So Crash Talk was the last one, which came out in 2019. And that one, like I still remember like Floating in Water and like the real hits off that album I still play and I still enjoy. But the rest of it I don't really go back to. And I kind of feel the same way, or I see this album aging for me in the same way as the last one. It kind of seems like there's like a rock sound that he's trying to put forth throughout this album. And but then there's also like a little bit of a soulfulness with there too. Like there's carefully placed samples throughout the track list. And because of that, it kind of comes off a little bit, the track listing comes off a little bit chaotic, but I kind of wonder if that's intentional because there's a lot of references to Schoolboy Q's mental health throughout the album, throughout his lyrics. So perhaps that might have been an intentional thing, but it definitely comes forth as chaotic. Whether that's intentional or not, I'm not sure. But the last thing, before I send it back to you, it kind of seems like some of the songs, for example, Pop, kind of seem like Schoolboy Q is chasing a hit a little bit. And though he had a formula for hits, like I'd say probably between Oxymoron, Blank Phase, and then Crash Talk, like there was a clear formula for, oh, this is a Schoolboy Q song that everybody's gonna love. But I'm not sure that formula really translates to 2024 the same way. So I don't really see there being a hit here. And I think Pop is an example of that, where like it's a good song. It's okay. I mean, well, not good. It's okay. There's a lot of things that could have been done better, but overall, just like the energy that Schoolboy Q has on that song, it kind of suggests to me, okay, this is the one that he wants to push forward and he wants everybody else to like gravitate towards. And I don't really feel that. Gonna get more into that when we start talking about like song by song breakdowns, but that's my initial first reaction.
Yeah, and I think that's fair, and I think that the songs that I don't see myself listening to are a lot of the more like aggressive, the ones that you said have more of a rock sound, because that's not my kind of music. But I do think that it is certainly intentional to have that woven in throughout here to like kind of create that like chaotic environment, because this is a chaotic album.
Mhm.
And I don't think the hits off Oxymoron, if you go back and listen to the hits off Oxymoron, they're crazy.
Yeah.
Like
Studio is a classic.
he had like hits in a way that don't necessarily exist anymore, right? Like he had hits that it wasn't like a Vine song, it wasn't a TikTok song, it wasn't a app song, it wasn't viral. It was like studio and Man of the Year, Break the Bank with Alchemist.
Collard
Even
greens.
smaller ones like Collard Greens, like even smaller ones like Yay Yay at the end of that, like that whole Hell of a Night was a big song when it came
Mhm.
out. And so that landscape doesn't necessarily exist anymore, right? Like I don't think it has for about, like, I feel like 2017, 2018 was kind of the end of that. And it's honestly, you can even bookmark it with COVID, where things have
Yeah.
just changed so much since then, when it's like we're all inside. So the formula was go viral because no one was like outside playing the stuff as they would have been. Um, the soul samples scattered throughout here, it's a lot of relatively unknown producers. Like you have, I think it's Lost Times is with Alchemist
Mhm.
producing. So like that that sounds like an Alchemist beat. But I love to hear soulful instrumentals by not so well known producers, because you get to see how they would flip it a little differently than someone you would expect. And I think there's so many high points on this album for me, that the stuff I don't love, it's first of all, this album isn't long enough for me to be like, oh, this stuff I don't love builds half the project. And like it's definitely more stuff that I do like than what I don't like. Um, and I don't know. Schoolboy Q, he's talked a lot about Crash Talk, how that was his probably like most mellow album in terms of what he was putting in it personally. So I think, like you said, there is a more clear path to go follow a formula, because it's
Mhm.
not so much like Q. But if you've listened to his music the whole time, like it's always been weird. It's always been chaotic. It's been different versions of it. Like his first Habits and Contradictions and Oxymoron were a lot more like hungrier, I guess. And then Blank Face was like weird. Blank Face was definitely
Yeah.
like he was like in this like mysterious place where he was Blank Face. You know what I mean? It was like
Mhm.
almost like Schoolboy Q was gone. So I think this is really like a just a re not I wouldn't say a reintroduction, but just like the through lines of Schoolboy Q, the reason we all were listening to every album are still there, but now it's like a little more grown up. And he's always talked about his daughter on his music. He's always talked about real life and where he's at. And so I think that this is just a great album by a rapper who's been around for more than a decade, kind of just doing their thing. And this is probably biased because I'm a fan. I don't see some of the songs as like chasing a hit, right? I,
Mhm.
I I see it as building the chaos, like you said, where it's like something like Pop by Rico or with Rico Nasty, especially being track two. It's crazy to like have Funny Guy, which is like a pretty subdued, like soulful. There's not even like a verse or anything on the intro,
No.
and then you just go straight into Pop, and then but it bounces around, and I think the hit here is Thank God for Me,
Mhm.
right? Like that's the one I've seen on the internet more than anything. It feels a little bit like Kendrick and Baby Keem, like you know what I mean. It feels a little bit like that and the success that they had with I can't even remember the two songs. My brain is not
Oh,
working. The two that they
Range
put out,
Brothers
yeah,
and
Range Brothers and Family Ties.
yeah, Family Ties.
Feels a little bit like that. And I think that's the hit here. And we can
Mhm.
go, get into some more songs from here, but I think that when you start breaking it down like that, that's where the value is in this. And that's why it feels nostalgic. Like these songs mean something. It's not just like, all right, this one needs to hit this benchmark for us to be successful.
Yeah. Before we get into that, I do think this year is going to be interesting, especially for TDE, because this is their 20th anniversary, and basically everybody on TDE is supposed to be dropping. Like, there's an Absol album that's supposed to be coming. Reason, J Rock is supposed to be dropping. SZA is supposed to be dropping her deluxe to SOS. And all the other Dochi, someone who I've really, really been excited to hear a full album from, is finally releasing an album this year or supposed to. So I think that with Kendrick Lamar leaving TDE, there's a power vacuum at TDE, not necessarily in terms of like, oh, like we hate each other and we need someone to be the alpha and like be the leader. It's more so like they all are rappers and they rap for the sport, and the number one spot is vacant because Kendrick Lamar has left TDE. So I kind of expect all of the rappers, at least like SZA is kind of out of it because she's not really a rapper. But I expect all of the rappers on TDE to really kind of like put their best foot forward and kind of make their claim of I'm the best rapper on this label now. And with Schoolboy Q, like it's good, but in my opinion, and as someone who has loved TDE from like since I started listening to Kendrick Lamar, which is like probably like 2012, my ranking has always been Kendrick, Absol, Schoolboy Q, then J Rock. And off of this album, I don't really see that changing much. Like nothing really moves me about this album for me to put Schoolboy Q ahead of Absol. And unless Absol drops something that's like utter trash, which he's never done that, I don't see that ranking changing.
No, and outside of number one, I've never even really looked at it as a ranking because like number one was obvious, right?
Yeah.
No, like we're talking about someone who could be the best rapper ever,
Mhm.
right? So it's like, yeah, they're number one, and I miss that era, man. I miss that era when it was like you had these labels and these groups that meant something, right? Like even Black Hippie within TDE or that whole LA time for me and you being on the East Coast, like that looked on the from the internet, that looked like it was like the craziest thing in the world. The fact that
Yeah.
like TDE was going, Odd Future was going, the internet was going, and then they had like little crossover parts or people who would bounce around. Like Vince Staples was in there, Mac Miller was in there connecting dots, Sid was in there connecting dots, and I miss that era like a lot because that was, and it's probably because of the age I was, but like when you and I were 13 or 14, we had these like it's almost like real rappers in the making. And I don't want to say anything about, but it wasn't like I feel like everyone now, and this is going to sound really old, right? And I know there's a lot of independent music, and me and you talk about it a lot. But
Mhm.
in terms of like Odd Future and TDE used to be like, yeah, you had your whoever up top, right? And at that point, it still would have been like Wayne and Eminem still had something to say, and like all those older people had something to say, but then they were down there. Now I feel like you have like your Drakes, your Coles, and all that, and then everyone just wants to be like Playboy Cardi underneath that,
Yeah.
and it's like, well, everyone can't be Playboy Cardi, and there's no. That was just such like a original creative time, and this is definitely me being 25 and not 15, but yeah, this album just reminds me of that era, and the song with Absol sounds like it's from then, right?
Yeah.
Like they could have made that back then and it would have been like, oh yeah, especially like the chaos in that beat would have been like, okay, this happened in 2013, right?
Mhm.
Like it's like, and then New sounds like it's off Section 80.
Yeah.
Not exactly, but like the way it sounds. And I knew we weren't gonna get any Kendrick on here, right? I knew it. Like it's not like that anymore. I don't think there's any, beef or anything, but
No.
it's just not like that anymore. But like I do miss that time. I miss that time a lot when it would be like, all right, you know, Soul's dropping, so Kendrick's gonna get on that, and then like you would have this like this mesh, right? And it just doesn't happen like that anymore. I think to me, the only feature on this album that I really even care about is the Absol feature. Like
Yeah.
that's the only one that really did anything for me. And I think it's because of that connection. But I think it's important to talk about some songs on here because I'm curious to see what you like compared to what I liked.
Yeah. So let's start then. My first issue with this album is the intro and the outro. Like it's Funny Guy doesn't really, like we talked about it already, like it doesn't really have a verse on there. Like I my assumption is that the purpose of Funny Guy is to kind of ground the listener into the rock elements and on the beats that we're going to hear throughout the album. And I think it kind of does a good job of that, but I feel like it would have been more effective and more impactful if it was like an actual full song versus just like hearing a beat and then hearing the same repetition over and over and over again, and then like it goes to the next song. I do think that a Funny Guy going into pop works well, but then after that you get Thank God for Me, and that's more of a smooth track compared to the first two. And then it's kind of like that's where it really, like, we don't really have a time, like there isn't even at the start, there isn't even a time where it's like, okay, I'm settled into this album. It's more so like the chaos just starts right away.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm questioning the intent, if it's intentional or not. Like if it's not intentional, then the track listing just has to be better. But if it was intentional, then this is a good execution of how to create or how to piece together, engineer a chaotic environment for an album. But honestly, between the first three tracks, the besides what I just said, the one thing that I absolutely hate is how after Rico Nasty's last word of her verse, it automatically cuts off. I hate that so much. Like, give me a little bit of the beat at the end so I could like transition out of it. But then again, that goes into the chaos of it.
Yeah.
So that's a part of it. Also, another part throughout the album too is the the beats kind of sometimes, specifically on Ohio with Freddie Gibbs. It kind of overpowers the lyrics, and it's like I can't really understand what's being said unless I'm on Genius reading the lyrics as I'm listening to the song. So that's a part of the chaos for me. But send it back over to you.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, right? Because there's some artists that me and you talk about, and we see a track list like that, and we're like, oh yeah, that's disorganized, right? We're
Mhm.
like that's, and then with Schoolboy Q, this is what I mean by like an adult is back in the room. We're like, I don't know, did he do that on purpose to like create chaos? Other people would be like, oh, this is just disorganized, right? Like they need to go through and figure this out. And with Q, someone who's established, you and I are both like, I don't know. Maybe this could be on purpose. Like it's like given no benefit of the doubt to like a newer artist. We're like, yeah, you just threw these together. And then with Schoolboy Q, we're like, are you trying to show how crazy things are going? But I so I love Thank God for Me. I think that's gonna be the one from this album. Not for me, but I think that'll be the one. And it just has such like a good feeling, right? It's
Mhm.
like it's a great rap song, but it's very positive, and we don't get a ton of those anymore. Um, Blue Slides, I love that. I think that's probably a little homage to Mac Miller. So I'm biased there, but that's a great song. I think that's a very like laid back cue, just rapping. Yearn 101 to movie with Lovebirds in the middle. That's like a very like up tempo, like aggressive stretch, which I isn't my favorite.
Mhm.
Um, we talked about Ohio with Freddie Gibbs. It's kind of like a throwaway to me. I think it has
Mhm.
a lot of potential, but it feels
Yeah.
like it's just like that one feels like if it is on purpose, it's supposed to be like this like hazy, like you know what I mean? Like we
Mhm.
don't really know what's going on. Um
But
Cootie just
I feel like rappers need to start reading public perception because nobody like I nothing that Freddie Gibbs says I'm taking seriously anymore. Like I think that if you get someone a rapper who like still has some type of credibility in terms of like the words they say on that song, I think it performs better. I mean, you still have that issue with like the bass overpowering the lyrics, but at the end of the day, it's just like okay, this is just a full verse of like this dude who's rapping and like he tries to hit double time in the middle of the rap too, and it's like this is a very very slow paced beat. Like what are we
Well,
what
it's
are you trying to accomplish
yeah,
here?
the structure of the song is strange, and I think they
Yeah.
definitely maybe wasted an opportunity there because I would have liked to hear like a more structured song
Hmm.
with both of them. And I know that our opinions differ on Freddie Gibbs, but like I would have liked to hear. I love it when you get kind of like tough rappers from different cities around the country on a song together because I feel like that blends really well because you kind of get to hear like when Benny the Butcher and Boldy James get on a song together, or like when Vince gets on a song with Boldy James, and it's you kind of get that like like that real like dark grimy sound but from their respective cities. And with this it just like it's a good opportunity to get like a like a real LA, I wouldn't say Chicago, but like LA, like Midwest like
Hmm.
thing going on, and it just doesn't happen. I mean, it's followed up by or it's preceded by Cooties, which is a great, it's just Q rapping, which I really
Yeah.
appreciate, and then the song with Absol, which is great. um I don't want to I'm pretty much just going down the track list at this
Yeah.
point,
I mean,
but
it's fine. I mean, because
yeah.
the way I took notes is the same way. I Yearn 101, like there's a great rhyme scheme on there, but like I'm not
Hmm.
really if there's a message on that song, I'm not really hearing it. But that's also a return because like we said, Blue Slides, the sample on Slides is great. And I think that's really the first time that we really start hearing about Schoolboy Q and the mental health struggles that he's talking about throughout the album. He starts off or he says at one point in time, like there's so many more references to the mental health side throughout that song, but he starts off saying, "Better climb out of that hole before you fuck up your blessings." And then he starts talking about where these mental health struggles may stem from and the actual mental health struggles that he's having and stuff like that too. So I appreciated that song a lot. And then we go back to Urine 101, like I just said, with the more heaviness, heavy
Yeah.
bass beats and stuff like that. And then Lovebirds, I think Lovebirds is probably if there was one song I had to pick to describe this album, it would be Lovebirds because on Lovebirds you get a lot of the chaotic beats that we already talked about.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, like there's a little bit of a break with the soulful sample, and then like Lansky Walker at the end, like he's singing over that sample too. So if there's one song to really like encapsulate the sound of this
Yeah.
album, I think it's Lovebirds.
Yeah, and I don't want to skip over movie either.
Mhm.
I think how are we pronouncing that name? As Chike?
As Chike.
As Chike, however it's pronounced, it's like definitely like a Draco the Ruler Super the LA song. So I think
Yeah.
that's really important. Just it's Q putting that sound on, not putting it on as in,
Mhm.
he put it on, but like literally like putting
Yeah.
it on his album. Um,
It's probably
which
my
is
favorite
important.
beat also.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. I don't know how you feel. First, Nunu and Back in Love, pretty impartial to that stretch. Nunu, like I like it, but Lost Times, Alchemist instrumental, I
Mhm.
love that. And then actually Sneaky, my favorite song, maybe my favorite song on this, is Germany '86.
Mhm.
Like and this falls right in line with like the type of music that I like the most, where it's like a very like laid back, subdued soul sample instrumental with just bars on top. Um, and I love hearing most rappers on that. We've never really gotten to hear Q like laid back on soul samples like that
Mhm.
as often as this. It's always been a big mixture of stuff, but I feel like we have 5 or 6 songs on this album that are very like it sounds like a there's 5 or 6 songs in this that sound like all right, Alchemist and Schoolboy Q made an EP and put it out,
Yeah.
which for me is I love that, right? Like I definitely love that. But um yeah, after that, Time Killers is good. Pig Feet I could do without, and then Smile is really short, but it's a good outro.
Yeah. I would have
So
liked this smile was longer for sure.
I've seen a
Because
bunch of tweets saying that. That's like,
yeah,
hey,
like
we need Smile as a full track, and Schoolboy Q keeps saying he's like, that is the full track. I don't know what to tell
yeah. I
you.
mean, like we don't really I mean, at least on this album, we don't really get a lot of melodic Schoolboy Q, but when we do, it's nice. And
Yeah,
Smile is an example of that. And I think that's why people want more of that.
yeah,
I also think that in terms of like it's weird because like this album is like there are songs where it's clear that he has something to talk about, and then there's other songs where it's just like, all right, the scheme is good, you know, the rhyming is good, we expect that from you, but what the fuck are you saying?
Yeah.
And I feel like especially towards the end, like I have like at least like maybe like a sentence or two for like every song, and then we get to like lost time, not even, we get to like Nunu, and then Nunu I'm trying to figure it out, and then it's I kind of I wrote down um he's talking, I assume he's talking about the doubt that people had for him when he started to pursue rapping, and then Back in Love, like it's clear that he's talking about he's back in love with something, but what exactly is it? So I'm not really fully getting that there. Lost Times, I don't really know what he's talking about. Germany's 86, I don't really know what the theme of the song is. Time Killers, same thing. Pig Feet is about police. That's obvious. But and then Smile is about like him trying to work it out with I guess like whatever his relationship situation is, he's trying to work it out, and that's what Smile is. But overall, like I think the one way to describe this album is that it's consistently inconsistent,
Yeah.
because because you don't really know what's coming next from track to track. And I think that at least from the standpoint of subject matter and really starting to expound upon the subject matter, because again there are themes here about him talking about his mental health and him talking about the way that his environment when he was growing up, and like just like reminiscing on certain points in his life. I think that it would have been stronger if that was just the theme throughout the whole album, or if that was just a concept that was executed on every song, versus like some songs you are talking about it, some songs you aren't. But then again, and this is like the benefit of the doubt that we're giving Schoolboy Q here is doing a lot of heavy lifting for this album, because again, is that intentional?
Yeah. Well, and I wonder if you and I didn't have 2024 brain, if we would give the benefit of that of the doubt to everyone, right? And it's like because you can flip all this around and be like, yeah, this is an album from a person moving out of like crippling depression, pretty much, which he talks about on here. Like he's like hiding in the house. He doesn't like he's breaking down. He doesn't want to go anywhere. He's like at war in his own house, right? And this is like the coming out of that when it's like, all right, sometimes you're very introspective and sometimes you're just like trying to be normal again, right? Like
Mhm.
you're just trying to get that like regular. So I wonder
That's interesting. That's an interesting take on that. I like that take.
like you know what I mean? Where
Hmm.
it's like, yeah, you have these times where you're like sitting down and you're like, all right, I'm gonna do a Lost Times or a Germany 86 where I'm really like just sitting back and rapping. And I think part of this too is like Schoolboy Q just showing that he's like a great rapper,
Yeah.
which used to mean a lot more than maybe it does now, but to me and to a lot of people, it still means a lot. So like I love having songs like that. Like there's a lot of times where my favorites, Boldy James, right, is a great
Hmm.
example where he just has like a whole EP of just like the best raps, right? And it's not there's not like a necessarily like a central theme. It's just like, yeah, he's doing what he does. So I think some of that is here, but I do think that with the benefit of the doubt, you have the chaos that we've talked about, but like that chaos mirrors like real life,
Yeah.
right? Where it's like it's sometimes you're up, sometimes you're down, sometimes you're thinking about when you're down, sometimes you're like yearning for that time when you're up, sometimes you need to just turn up, sometimes you need to turn it off because you've been turning up too much.
Hmm.
And so I think that if you and I were, if it were 10 years ago, we'd be like, whoa, this is like such like a thematic decision by him, right? And
Hmm.
since things have gotten very watered down and diluted over the years, we're like, I don't know, is that on purpose or is it just because you need to get something out? Personally, and this is certainly biased, but it's also like a belief in an artist that we've seen for a long time now.
Hmm.
I would love to, it's my belief that these choices are on purpose, right?
Hmm.
It's my belief that every
I
song
share
is
that
here
belief with you.
it's my I believe that every song
Hmm.
is here because Schoolboy Q is like we needed it here.
Hmm.
And I'm sure there's other songs that didn't need to be there that could have been there. But the benefit of the doubt, and I think this is something me and you can use moving forward. I like this
Yeah.
conversation. It's like, do they get that benefit of the doubt? And it's not fair, right?
No.
It's definitely unfair, but it's that's what establishing yourself and coming back and we're almost 15 years with Schoolboy Q at this point.
Hmm.
Like there's enough track record and enough thoughtfulness where I can believe that like these choices were made on purpose. And so for me, going into it without any hint of doubt, I love this album, right?
Yeah.
Like we can get into our end segments, but like I really love it and that will be reflected in how I treat it moving forward.
Yeah. I before we do, I do think it's interesting that Schoolboy Q makes an album that's also talking about mental health when the last wait. Well, besides, well, actually, no. SZA did kind of talk about her mental health a little bit on SOS. But mainly what I wanted to talk about was Absol's last album, Herbert. That one was specifically like fully about mental health and stuff like that. And I think when you have a song like Foe, where you have Schoolboy Q and Absol, like I think that that song is probably one of the most, but is probably like what song did I say before? I said Lovebirds is probably the best song in terms of like the sound, like encapsulating the full sounds of the album. But I think Foe is kind of the best song in terms of like encapsulating the subject matter of the song.
Yeah,
Because then also like with that, like you have Schoolboy Q talking about like the what he's going through and stuff like that. Absol does that as well. But then when you have like the bridge when they start talking about I think it was like money hoes, something like drugs or something like that. Like I take that to mean like the coping mechanisms that you're
yeah,
using to cope with that, and having Absol there too, also knowing that Absol also like went through that type of battle, like they have like the same similar battle, kind of,
yeah,
like I think that that song within itself is probably at least for me, it's going to be the best song on the album. But that being
yeah.
said, before you want to respond, and then after that, final thoughts.
Yeah. It'll be quick. I think that I hope we get more from Q and Absol moving forward. I hope
Yeah.
we get like a song every now and then because it really does feel like a moment when those two get together and like there's it's a different thing. It feels like when two basketball players are on the same team for a while and then they like like it didn't work out like this, but
Hmm.
like Harden and KD getting back together, Harden and Russ getting back together, right? Like that feeling that's like oh shit, like you know what I mean? Like they're back together, so you get that feeling, and then their experiences are similar. Like they're on the same in the same group, playing kind of second or third fiddle, and the number one guy figured out his path, right?
Yeah. And he
He's
just
doing his
left.
own thing. He's very confident in what he does, so it's similar. And then they've both like made references to Mac Miller passing on numerous times, like Absol
Mhm.
and Schoolboy Q. Not to say that that's a common experience, but like there is like a certain level
It
of like
is though,
fabric
because
there. Yeah,
yeah, like it is
there's a
though.
certain
Like that's
level of
someone that you really cared about, like
that,
that
right, and
both of
that they
you really
both
cared
cared
about.
about.
And
Yeah,
that's really like it's similar to like I think about Ski Mask and like it's like Ski Mask and him losing XXXTentacion, someone he was really,
yeah,
really close with, him losing Juice WRLD, someone who's really, really close with, and just thinking about like really he's not really the same. He's not in the same position that he was because he had to take that much time away
yeah,
from music because of coping with someone that you really, really cared about. And I think
yeah,
with
exactly.
Absol and Schoolboy Q, I don't think it's a mistake that they both have been away for kind of the same amount of time, 5 years each,
Yeah.
between albums.
Yeah, I mean it's a lot to deal with. Like they're super famous, and then the whole game changes, and only one person off TDE really flourishes
Hmm.
moving forward, and kind of everyone else gets like pushed to a spot where it's like, hey, like I don't know what to tell you. Like we got this one guy who does numbers, so like that's who's going to do all the numbers now. There isn't as much wealth to go around, but we can get into the end of this because I just think it's important to keep talking about it, and I'm excited to hear what your favorite songs are here.
Yeah. Do you want to go first with your final thoughts?
Yeah, so my final thoughts, and I kind of already said it. I just think this is like a great album from an established rapper in this space who really blew up when I was really first getting into like hip hop, and so I'm super thankful that you know 13 years after Habits and Contradictions, we get an album like this. So I love it. Like pretty simply, I love it.
Top three tracks and playback value.
Yeah. So I'll start with playback value. I'll start with my tracks. So my no order, and I'm leaving out Blue Slides and I'm leaving out Lost Times because it's the Mac reference and the Alchemist beat. So I don't want to like make that too easy and be like, oh
Mhm.
yeah, I love those two. Uh so I have Cooties, I have Foe, and I have Germany 86, with Germany 86 being my favorite. In terms of playback, I think Thank God for Me is definitely going to hold a place with the community that really loves this album and supports Q. And so I think that will keep it alive. I have a tough time putting a real timeline into this one. So I'll say a few months prohibitively. I don't know if that's real or not. For me though, I'm giving this the rest of the year, and this is just going to get put into the rotation of the artists I go through and shuffle their whole discography. And so this will be there. When I decide it's a Schoolboy Q day, this will be there.
Yeah, it's basically a legacy act in your
Yes.
discography, or not your discography, your rotation. My final thoughts are this is the perfect album for Schoolboy Q diehard fans. However, someone who like me who isn't fully invested in Schoolboy Q as a lot of other people are, I'm not really as moved. I think that there are some hit attempts, but I think that it kind of comes off as a little bit dated. And I think that maybe like more popular features in 2024 would have helped the hits be hits. My top three tracks are Foe, Lovebirds, and Blue Slides. Foe being the best out of the three, and then Blue Slides being the worst out of the three, even though it's still the third best track in my opinion. Playback value, I think objectively maybe 2 weeks, and subjectively for me, probably a week. I don't really know if I'm gonna really be going back to this just because of like the chaos and stuff like that. It's not like really a full smooth play through. So maybe I'll just take the songs that I like and just like dip. But yeah, this has been the Cat Podcast. This has been episode 501. Do us a favor, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to leave your opinion of Blue Lips in the comments below. Follow us on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at Old Milk Media. Check out oldmilk.co for more information. I'm Nate Sperlin. That is Taylor McLeod, and we'll be back when hip hop tells us to be. We are out. Thank you for watching.